Now in part 5, we're going to review how to use viewports and cameras and get the camera to follow our player because we don't want to see our whole room. And we're also going to add something called Tilesets. Let's start with camera. So first we're going to go into our room. And down in the Properties panel, we're going to expand Viewports and Cameras, way down here on the bottom left. And then we're going to check Enable Viewports. We're going to open that first Viewport 0 and make it visible. So we need to decide how far we want to zoom in, how much of our room we want to show. So this square right here is 500 by 400. Let's set our camera properties. Let's make this 960 by 640. That's a pretty common size. So that's how much of our room we're going to see. And then we'll change our viewport to 1440 by 960, also fairly common viewport. Make sure that you're following your player. Make sure you're following your player. We're going to change our horizontal and vertical borders. Remember, those numbers should be half of the camera property. So half of 960 is 480, and half of 640 is 320. Now let's run it. And we've zoomed in, so our player is larger. I like the size of him. And we can see part of our room. Let's make sure that we can go over here, that we're always following our player. Whoops, can't quite make it on that. So we are following our player as we climb up, and our player is generally in the middle of the room until we get closer to borders. And as we get close to the edge of the room, of course, our camera doesn't move with us. But okay, so that's pretty good. I like that. And now we're going to change the look of our walls, because right now they're just really plain simple green squares, and we might not want them to look like that. So we're going to use something called a tile set. Tile sets are really nice because they make it real easy and quick to draw things. So we're going over here to our sprites. First we have to create the sprite. So we're going to create a new sprite, and we're going to call it Tile Set. And then we're going to import from our assets, platform assets. We're looking for this tiles image. Now we have this as a sprite, and we can now create it as a tile set. So we're going to create a tile set. We're going to call this TS_tiles. And we have to use a sprite. That's why we had to create the sprite. We need a sprite to use with our tile set, and we have that. We've called that tile set. So here's our tile set. Notice that the grid is really small in here. We have a lot of squares, and we don't really have that many tiles, so we're going to change that. And we can't see all of our properties, so I'm going to hide my side borders so we can see all of the tile properties. Right now the width and the height are set to 16. Those need to be set to 32. Width and height to 32. And once you do that, now you'll have this square setup that is 6 squares tall and 8 squares wide. So we've got 48 squares, but we really only have 47 tiles because that's not a tile right there. Okay, so I'm going to click down here at the bottom of my TileSet window. There's auto tiling. I'm going to click auto tiling, and I'm going to select 47. It's our only choice, so it makes it easy. The first box needs to be the last tile. So I'm going to click on that last tile, and it filled in that first box. And then the red square moves because that's the next box you're going to fill in. After that, you're just going to go across this image row by row by row and fill this in. So the last one came up to be first, and now there's no tile at the bottom of that corner. But we're just going to click each of these tiles one at a time. The toolbar is a little annoying. And fill all of those in. So just keep working and make sure you don't skip anything and you don't get any tile twice because these are very important. The order has to be exactly like this. If you change the order, then your tiles won't paint properly. And I'll show you what that means in just a few minutes. Okay, and our first one was up at the top, so we're done. So we've got all of these tiles. They're all identical to our sprite, except we moved the bottom one up to the top, and then everything else is perfect. Now, these tiles are actually going to be placed everywhere we have a wall tile. So I'm going to go into my sprites. I'm going to open my wall tile, and I'm going to change its opacity. In Edit Image, and over on the right, underneath of all the toolbars where the layers are, we're going to double-click this default layer, which will bring up this Layer Properties window, and we're going to just change the opacity to about 25, something close. It's going to make it a very light color. Okay. We just want to be able to see through it. So I'm going to close my editor, I'm going to open my room, and now you can see all of the tiles still, the wall tiles, and you can see that they are very light. Now, if you have areas over here, like where this one is darker, that just means I have two wall tiles. I have one on top of the other. I don't really need it. I don't really have to clean it up either, but I could select it and delete it. Now I don't have any place where I have duplicate tiles on top of each other. Not that that's really important, but you know, it's just something you can tell. So now we need to add a tile layer. So notice that all of these layers that we've added here, these are all instance layers. You can tell that if you put your mouse over the top of it, it'll tell you those are instance layers because we are putting instances of objects on them. No sprites, just instances of objects. So every time you drag a wall over, it becomes a new instance. And we have those displayed down here. So there's all of the instances of walls that I have. I have a lot of walls. Just make sure that the only thing you have on that layer are walls because we're trying to keep our game nice and clean. But underneath of the walls layer, I want to create a TileSet layer. So I'm going to choose background, and then I'm going to create a new TileSet layer. It's the one here that has the little squares on it. Looks like tiles. And once you create that, it has no TileSet to begin with. We're going to click on where it says no TileSet, and we're going to choose our TS tiles. Okay, so they show up over here next to the asset browser. So now instead of just the asset browser, we now have another tab over there. And if I expand it a little bit, it's called Room Editor. Just curious because I also have a room editor on the left and a room editor on the right. The room editor on the right just has my tiles, and it also has brushes. I could use tiles as a brush, and it has libraries. And the library is what we're interested in. So in the library, we're going to select Auto Tile. And then I'm going to come over here. I'm going to just draw tiles. And I'm doing this just by holding my mouse. I don't have to use the Alt key. I'm just trying to draw tiles. I'm just clicking, holding my left mouse button as I draw tiles and fill them in. And notice that the top tile has the grass on it, but if I drag this down, I could actually fill in like a little wall that you have to go up. Don't like that one, so I'm going to delete it. So up here at the top are some tools that we can use, and right now we're drawing. I'm going to choose the eraser tool. I'm going to erase that tile there. I'm going to erase these two here also, and I'm going to erase those two. Notice that it didn't actually fix my tiles, so I'm going to go back to drawing. Make sure that Auto Tile is selected. There we go. We just have to make sure that Auto Tile is selected. And I need to get rid of these. I'm not doing a very good job. Go back to Auto Tile and fix those. Okay, so, but basically what you want to make sure is that you have a wall under every place where you draw a tile. So like I'm going to have some issues right here because there's no wall. I'm going to leave it that way for now. But every place else I have a tile, I have a wall. Except I noticed that my room isn't all visible. So I will draw my tiles here. Actually, I'm going to erase these tiles just so you can see what happens when I don't have tiles over my walls. So before we run it, we're going to go back to our asset browser. I'm going to click this tab here. Remember, Room Editor, Asset Browser. I want to open the wall object, and we're going to make it invisible. So we're going to uncheck visible right there. So now our wall is invisible. So when we run, we won't see any walls. We will only see the tile sets. We do see the tile sets. And oh, there's a wall there I ran into. Yep, can't go that way. So we keep going, and oh, look at that, I can walk in front of that. So, but it's cool, I can walk in front of it. Maybe that's what I want. Maybe I want to be able to walk in front of it. It's kind of odd that it doesn't have any grass there, but you know, we can probably fix that. But over here, I can't get out, but it looks like I should be able to get out. You can't see the walls, but there is a wall there. So that's why you want to make sure that every place there's a wall, you put a tile set. And if you put a tile set, that there isn't a wall, that you've done that, you know, for a purpose. You really wanted it to look like that. That's, you know, not what I wanted it to look like really, but I'll just pretend that it is. Okay, so if you don't have a wall, you're going to walk in front of it. Now you should know why you're walking in front of it and not behind it. And if you wanted to walk behind it, you should know what it would take to make something that you could walk behind. And you actually should be able to do that. You should know why you can't get out here, even though doesn't look like there's anything there, but I can't get out there, and you should understand why. Okay, so make sure that you understand all of those things, and we're going to create 4 levels. So we're going to duplicate this level. I'm going to right click and duplicate. Always make sure that you get a level that's working, that looks good, and duplicate that level. And we're going to call that level 2. And we'll duplicate that again. And we'll call that level 3. And we'll duplicate again. We'll call that level 4. So you've got 4 levels. They all look exactly the same right now. I want you to make different designs in these levels. Okay, and here's what you need to do. You need to have something you can walk in front of, like I created. But I also want you to create something that you can walk behind. You're going to have to think about that. Share with your friends, talk to your friends, get some help with your friends. I am not going to help you with that. You have to create something that you can walk behind. And then I want all 4 of these levels, I want them to just all look different. I don't really care too much about what else is there, but I want them to look different. Now, one thing I do want you to think about how to do, let's just run our first level. And it's only going to run our first level because we don't have a transition to get from one level to another. I want you to think about the fact that, okay, so this enemy is here. And all of those enemies are stuck over there. I would like to have some areas where enemies are trapped on a platform that I could jump into or jump over or something. You know, just think about, platform games, what platform games look like. Just think about what you would like for them to look like and go ahead and design those. And then remember that as you're using your tile set, in order to draw with the tile set, you need to be on a tile set layer, and we need to go to the room editor and choose libraries and choose auto tile. And when you auto tile, you'll get, the fill in that you should, if you wanted that to be filled in, and you want that to be, so maybe I want a hole there, so I've got a little cave or something. But that's what you can do with the auto tiles. But remember that in order to erase, delete, you need to choose that eraser tool up there, and then you can go through and delete tiles, but they don't update themselves like they should. So then change back to auto tile, and then you can make them update themselves. Okay? So I want you to play around with the tile sets. Remember that it's next to the asset browser, but only when you have that tile set. You can't put tiles on enemies. Okay, so there is no tile. I'm on an enemy layer, and I can't find my tile sets. Where are my tile sets? Well, that's because you can't put tiles on an enemy layer. You only put tiles on a tile set layer. And then we need to choose libraries to find the auto tile. And remember that you should have walls over your tiles in general. Most of the time, we've got a wall and a tile. If you want to change the color of your wall, say that's whatever color you've chosen isn't showing up, just open your wall sprite and go to edit and change its color. Maybe I wanted it to be red. Maybe that would show up better. So I'm going to do that. My opacity is going to stay because the opacity is set on the layer. This layer is what has the opacity, so that is what makes it nice and light. So then when I go back to my room, maybe I can see them better. Whatever. Just whatever color you choose, just make sure that you understand how the tile sets work and all of that. And when you're done with 4 levels, you have 4 interesting levels, raise your hand. Let me come around and check it. But remember, I want some areas where enemies get trapped on platforms and don't always end up at the bottom. So if you can figure out how to do that, there are a number of ways to do that. So I just want you to, figure out how to do that. Okay.